add the whole things of their parents divorcing on top of like their puberty years and their teen years when they're
Yes.
developing and trying to figure out their identity, that again is just an added stress to them. The other mistake I think a lot of people make is that they don't put a lot of
On up again, and she's right here, waiting. Rose. All right.
good
What people we
morning.
have here? Good morning. Welcome, a warm Caribbean welcome to you. I can say
Oh,
warm Caribbean to you because you're you're a little away from the sun, the winter going on.
it is deep winter. Yes.
Welcome, Rose. So my people, we have here with us Rose Simard Bashand. And she's the founder of Kayem. And it's a professional divorce service institution. Rose, based upon saying that, could you give us a little more about you and your mission? Thank you.
Oh, where to start? You know, the divorce industry is a tough one, right?
Yes.
No one ever goes into a relationship thinking that it could be the end in mind. And sort of I'm on a mission to sort of help people understand the fallout of it, but also understand before they even get into it, really the expectations about it. Because just like Deacon Chambers was talking about, like the realistic expectations, is a lot of people have, they're hurting, they're in a tough spot, and they want people to help them and fix their problems. But unfortunately, there is no magic wand. There is no magic pill.
Right. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the main reasons for divorce, Rose? Sometimes I would say it's because the partner is greedy and he cheats and all of that. But is it really so? That
You
alone
know
can
what?
be the reason?
There's a lot of reasons, and I just don't even want to even begin to say one, right? But I think it's a slippery slope, right?
Yes, it is.
There's a lot of things, and you know, from infidelity to just falling out of love to, you know, sometimes life circumstances also create a lot of pressure, right? Financial pressure, you know, having a child with special needs or job changes, right? There is so many factors, outside influences, family, right? So it is so much, but you know, the biggest thing is deep rooted. It's the unhappiness in people, right? And just wanting to make a change. They're seeking. I think in this day and age, we're always looking for more. We're always looking for making how we can make our lives better. So I think when people make a decision to divorce, they're holding out hope that things will be better.
Better, don't it? All right.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give to someone who is going through divorce during this time with social distancing and all?
You know, I don't know that I would give any different advice just because of the pandemic, right? The social distancing is you have to tread carefully and tread slowly and be really sure. So planning and preparing, not jumping in too quick. You know, just to,
Yeah.
it is so important that, I don't even know how to say this, is that you have to understand this process. It's not going to happen overnight. If you've been together for, you know, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever, it is not something that's going to happen overnight, right? So again, the realistic expectations, sort of understanding. So the planning and preparing will go a long way. Don't have to go back and forth. And really understanding actually where your partner might be in the stage too is really important. Like there's emotional stages of divorce. You know, if you have been the one to decide to leave the relationship, you've probably been thinking about it for quite some time, right? It might come to a surprise to your spouse, you know, even though they knew you weren't happy, it still comes as a surprise. Different stages, yeah, they're at different stages, right? Like divorce is hard. A lot of people think that it's definitely a process, but it's more about the emotions. It's more than the finances or the process or the legal part. So really understanding when you're thinking in the planning is understanding where your partner is at as well, because
Yeah.
it's kind of that push-pull relationship, right? You might be ready to move on, but they're not, or vice versa. If you were the one that was left, right? Understanding and coming and understanding from their perspective as well. So there's always two sides to every story. So
Always.
plan, yes. Yes. So planning, taking the time to breathe, understanding that you can't rush this process without really detrimental effects.
Okay. Okay. You mentioned the process, the divorce process.
Hmm.
You describe this process for us and tell us where it starts and what it looks like in the end.
Yeah, this is actually probably one of the most misunderstood things about divorce, right? Because people just say, I want a divorce, but actually, divorce is really just a legal process that ends the marriage. There's everything leading up to that one moment in time, right? That signature, right? So I like to say that there's four stages of divorce. This is the way I describe the time. And the first one we just talked about, the planning, the preparing, starting with the end in mind, right? Starting to think, okay, what is it that I really need or want out of this situation, so that thinking about that. The second stage is the exchange of information. Like, you need to figure out where you're at, um, emotionally, financially, living circumstances. There's so many different factors there that before you can make any decisions, you need information, right? So there's that exchange of information. And that's actually usually the most overwhelming part, because amongst all the emotions, everything that's happening, people get really overwhelmed. And it's also, I think, very disheartening for a lot of people, because all of a sudden you're talking about exchange of information, you're bringing down their relationship to paper. Like, you're almost depersonalizing the process, right? They're seeing
Yeah.
it in black and white. It's far from black and white. So that is definitely where they get stuck. And the next stage is that second stage is so important, because the next stage is deciding who gets what, who pays what is it all going to look like. Those are the parameters that you're going to live within for the rest of your life, right? So without making informed decisions, or without having information, you could be making things in haste. You might have regret, or you might have wondered how it might have been different if you had known something differently or had taken some time. So there's a lot of what ifs in
Yeah.
divorce, and that's why I just say tread carefully, be very self-aware. And then the last stage is the legal documentation, right? Like, actual putting this all together. And I think the biggest mistake most people make is that they start the legal process too early, which leads to a lot of costs, a lot of misunderstanding. And one thing I've learned in all my training is that we can't avoid difficult conversations. We can't avoid conflict. We can't avoid the communication. That's actually what brings people together. And so if you're going to avoid those parts, you're going to have an acrimonious divorce. You're going to have something that you have many people managing it for you. And I don't know if I'm probably dating myself, but if you think about, like, the telephone game, right? Like, if you were to say something to one person and ask them to repeat it to the next person, and then to the next person, and so on, it's probably doesn't take very long. 4, 5, 6 people in. Is it the same message that
Exactly.
it began and
Mhm.
came out, right? So that is that part about that legal process, is that they're focusing on the wrong things. It's The terminology is difficult, and if you're having people represent you, there is going to be misinterpretation, there's going to be miscommunication, and there's going to be delays.
Yeah. All right.
Hmm.
And some people can say they really want to speed it up, while others they're not open for the divorce, so they don't want to rush it. But
Hmm.
they have to come to that common ground, that commonality, to decide whether or not they're going to proceed forth or give the relationship another chance.
Yeah.
So yeah, they must be careful of the influences and what their friends or family are telling them. You know,
Oh,
be
very
mindful
much
of that.
so. Everybody has
Yeah.
advice. Everybody has
Hmm.
advice.
But then it's your life and you have to decide what's best for you, So we
Hmm.
have to be careful. So, Rose, what are the costs associated with the divorce process?
Oh, are you talking about just money?
Emotional, mental, financial, everything.
Oh,
In a nutshell.
it's oh, where to even begin? And it's going to be different for every situation. So for the costs, right? Like, the one of the things that people look at is the cost of time wasted. So
Yeah.
even just looking at it is just like that regret, the cost of regret, wishing that things had been different. That is one of the costs, right? The legal process in itself is a cost, right? That's a given, and that's what most people just sort of see. But that's just surface level. So now we got to think about like the emotional toll it takes, right? Even if you were the one to decide on divorce or to end a relationship, I will say there's nobody that makes that decision very easily. That is something that is been weighing on them. They worried about it. They don't know what the outcome. There's a lot of uncertainty. So it's just that healing process. So definitely emotional. There is unfortunately no financial upside to divorce, right? Think about it. There's no economic scales. Like you're together financially. And the sad part, this is probably one of the more difficult things in COVID or during this pandemic, is that people will be staying in unhappy relationships because they can't see them financially making it on their own. So when I first got into this work about 5 years ago, someone actually said that in times of boom, like when the economy is going really well, you actually see more divorce, because people can see they have more hope. They're more optimistic that they can go at it alone. But when times are tough, when they're worried about a lot of different things, they start second guessing themselves. They start going with that. So it's definitely going back to take your time, really understand what the process is, right? It's what you do during this time, the process really will have an immense ripple effect on the people around you and your future. So that's definitely so time forward, time back, right? Time wasted, what is the valuable time, right? So regret, there's just so much, right? A transition costs, even things, right? there's,
Yeah.
there's a lot.
Yeah.
And you
Wow.
can't separate
Yes.
what your life is like work, right? You know that if you're going through this experience, it's going to have an effect on work. It's going to affect on how you're showing up in other aspects of your life.
It's going to
So,
affect every area. It's going to
mhm,
affect every area. I mean, it's
every,
like a detriment, you
yeah,
know, you're
yeah,
losing it
so,
all,
mhm,
basically,
yeah,
losing your family, your foundation. So it will affect you, you know.
yeah.
So it's
I like to
something
think they're not losing your family. I think you're redefining the family.
redefining. All right. All right. I'm
Mhm,
big divorced and I'm not looking
yeah.
forward to it. So it's redefining. All right.
Redefining the relationship, right? I always like to try to have an optimistic, like a um, spin on it. And I don't even want to spin, but it's so much easier to be working towards a goal or thinking about something that's more positive than thinking with regret or with the mistakes, right? And thinking, oh, poor me. It's really easy to get caught up in that victim mode if you can't switch it and try to start to see a little bit of the silver lining, because with time you will see more and more. And at the end, hopefully you will say that it was the best decision that I made. Wasn't easy, never is, but the hope would be is like, you know what, that was the right decision.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Rose, for someone going through a divorce, is it possible for them to save on effort and time and money? Is there a way for them to do that if they're really going to take that step?
Yes,
Is it
it's by taking control, taking accountability, right? Taking responsibility that, no one can fix all the problems divorce is going to cause for you, right? So, relationship math says it can't be 100% somebody
yeah.
else's fault, right? So, whether like the Mr. and Mrs. Chambers had said before, right, is the expectations, did you really know this person, right? There's a grieving
Yeah.
process. So yeah, it's thinking sort of before acting, right? Feeling probably is even better. Like if you really want to keep your costs down, feel what you're going through. Don't just put the band-aid on. Don't suppress what you're happening, because it is going to rear its head at one point. It is going to come out, right? So take your time and feel the process as opposed to just go through the motions, because you will you will pay more in terms of all those costs we even just talked about. So yeah, it's taking control and really understanding that people can help you. I like to tell my clients that divorce is a journey. People can walk it with you, but no one can walk it for you.
For you. Well said. People can
Mm-hmm.
walk it with you, but they can't walk it for you. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
going through that process, well, not necessarily just divorce, but a broken relationship, so to
Anything.
speak, feel. We all keep it bottled in. I, for one, love doing that. Bottled in and don't want to let it out. But there's a time when you have to have that pity party and schedule yourself, as one of my quotes said, schedule yourself for that pity party and just let it flow.
Yeah,
And then
we
you said, all
can't.
right, I'm good at that time. So from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock, that's my schedule. To pity and cry and vent. But at 8 o'clock,
Mm-hmm.
that's it. Move on.
Mm-hmm.
Schedule it and think and let it out and vent.
Yeah.
So yes, definitely
And
so.
that's a great incentive,
What?
and that's a good point, is that you can't avoid the negative feelings, but you can learn from them. You can use them as motivation and say, hey, I don't want to be here. I don't like this feeling. How can I do things differently? Right?
Mm,
So it is, and that comes from that self-awareness. No one can avoid if I believe there's 5 stages, and if you've done any research about the grief cycle, it's very similar. The loss of a relationship or the end of a relationship is very similar to the grief cycle by Kubler-Ross. And so, yeah, depression is, a part. It's a quiet part where you do have to cry. You feel like you want to be, under the covers for like a whole month, and you just want to shut yourself. And that is part of the process. You have to heal. If you are going to, the people who don't ever actually hit that part, like they act like I don't care, he means nothing to me or whatever, they will come crashing and they will actually hit bottom more severely, right? So that denying of those emotions and what you feel. And I love the idea of scheduling it, because it's stop resisting it. Understand that it's a part of the process and honor it, and
yeah,
you're going to be so much better to be able to
yes,
prepare to move on.
yes, very much so. Awesome,
Hmm.
awesome. Rose, what are the options available for those going through a divorce?
They're way more than people think. Way more. Many people think their only option is a lawyer or solicitor or an attorney
Yeah,
wherever you live. But pretty much all over the world, the lawyers do play a role on it, but there are a lot of options. There's do-it-yourself options, right? And the key, though, for do-it-yourself or mediation, anything like that, is to work through the communication. You can't stop communicating. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's difficult, but you have to communicate. Somebody has to communicate. There has to be an exchange of information, and the sooner you can keep doing it and not let it erode or completely disappear, it will actually get easier. So yeah, so there's do it yourself is direct negotiations. You could sit down at the table and decide what it looks like. You could have a
yes.
friend, you could have a family member help you, right? You could have somebody from the community help you. Like there's a lot of resources there. Mediation, then you're having like a professional person that facilitates the conversation. There's, again, lawyers and solicitors. That is always an option. There's a big, I'm not sure how in Jamaica or where you're from, but mediation arbitration has become very popular.
We have that. Yeah, we have
Yeah,
the meetings.
yeah, yeah. And collaborative law, there's an option there. And then, the last resort, and thankfully, the majority of cases actually don't end up in court, believe it or not. Less than
Yeah.
20% of cases go to court. Even though they threaten, it's that black cloud that hangs over everybody
Yes.
about the court, and they get scared. But in fact, in my experience, is that it's actually not about property, it's not about money that they fight about, it's about the emotional issues, because you can't contract emotions, you can't
Right.
contract the hurt feelings or the all that stuff, right? So people are either fighting about custody and parenting or things, or the frying pan or the set of dishes that really have no value,
Value.
but but they have value. And so I guess that what coming back about saving the effort and time and money is coming back to actually knowing what your values are. Like one of the things that I do with my clients is I walk them through, like, affirm your values, reroute who you are, because that's actually what's often happened, is that they have lost themselves along the way. They have felt
Mhm.
that. So if they can reground then with their values and say, hey, you know what? I haven't changed. I'm still that beautiful person. I'm still that person that started out in the relationship. But a lot of people think they have, and they get very upset about it. But when they can see, it's like, you know what, that's important to me. And I can see why the relationship ended. All of a sudden, it could be a light bulb moment. And then they can figure out their
Yeah.
priorities. Okay, why? What is the route? What is it? What do they want out of this? But they have to ground themselves first. They got to rediscover themselves first, right?
Yes.
And that's part of the planning, that stage one, right? If you skip
Yeah.
that, you're just being reactionary, and you're going to be going back and forth, and it's going to take you a long time and take a toll.
Yes. And the same
Did
thing. Should relationships continue just for kids' sake and no love or affection? What's your take on that?
That's a tough one. There's a lot of circumstances, and I think that's just too broad of a question, but let me give you what I see. A lot of people think that they'll stay till the kids are older, right? They
Yes,
think yeah. But in my opinion, this is my opinion, and I do believe there is research to go with this, is that it's actually harder on older children than younger children. Because they're the older yeah, it is because the older children, they might not have been in a healthy environment, right? Like the impact that it's going through, that they're aware, they know what's happening, so they're also have these bond with these parents. So it's the change is very difficult, and especially with older kids, they're discovering themselves. You add the whole things of their parents divorcing on top of like their puberty years and their teen years, developing and trying to figure out their identity. That again is just an added stress to them. The other mistake I think a lot of parents make is that they put a lot of decision making on the kids, on teenagers, and because they think they're old enough to decide. Kids don't want to decide between their parents. They love them both. Yeah. So I just think that, you think if it's just because of the age that you're thinking about, think twice, right? But there's a lot of other circumstances that I would say that, you know what, I can't definitively tell you yes or no, right? There's a lot of things, but I really just try to get people to say, kids at any age, they need structure, they need predictability, they need to know that they're going to be loved, and do not put adult decisions from like your relationship decisions on teenagers. And that's where a lot of people, because it's easier, right? They're just kind of doing that. And some kids have such a nurturing heart, right? They shouldn't become the caregivers. They should still be teenagers.
Yes, they should. That's something that I promote. Children should be children. Let them live. Let them enjoy life. Let them be happy. Let them laugh. Don't stress them. Don't let them pick up adult responsibilities. Worrying about mommy, worrying about daddy, and all these things. Let them live and be free. I am passionate about that. Like honestly, I am very.
Yeah. So definitely be aware, right? Age is a huge difference. The age is a big factor of your kids.
Okay, but no, you have highlighted to me that and enlightened me that the teenagers, they'll have it more difficult than the younger ones, and it's so true. I wasn't even thinking of that. Like probably the parents, I'll be thinking that they're big enough now, so they understand. But that's the puberty phase is the phase really and truly where they're trying to find their footing in life. They're trying to understand themselves. They're trying to connect, build on relationships. So that would be an added stress for the poor kids, and that is so true.
Yeah.
Rose, how does one handle always being left behind in a relationship? Your partner always up and gone leave you. Without a word, some of us.
You gotta look inward. You gotta do some inward. You gotta start with you. You've got to love yourself first. You've got to learn that much of the decision, and I wholeheartedly believe this, is that it's not about you. If you get left behind, it's because that other person can't see your gift. The other person can't see your shine. So if you can unearth that and be confident in who you are, that person just wasn't a right fit, right? So that's a very pragmatic, very simple kind of view. But yeah, if you're left behind, it's just like, instead of doing the poor me, what is it? Because you can't control what other people are going to do. You can't control how they show up. And there, like you said, we talked about why there's a lot of divorces. There's so many factors. It's not just one thing. So it can't just be you. So,
Yes, yeah.
but it also, that's the only thing you can control, right? So yeah, get a coach, do some personal work. I love, like, I believe movement is medicine. So again, rediscover who you are, right? Really go understand why it is you're getting into a relationship, understand, what you bring to the relationship, right? So, because that's the only thing that's within.
But the funny thing though, Rose, a few of my friends, they have contacted me and said that this person who jilted them in
Mhm.
past are reaching out and connecting and saying they're sorry, and if only they had known, and they would like to go back there. So
Mhm.
you wonder, is it really, for those ladies, was it really their fault, or was it just probably the male counterpart thinking that they're better than, and they find something better than them at the time, and
Yep.
went after, so you wonder, so it's crazy.
And I don't think it is their fault. I don't think it is their fault in any way. It's no one person's fault. It's the lack of getting to know each other. It's the lack of expectations. It's the lack of communication. Just to kind of give you a story, in the year I was getting married, my mom's second marriage was coming apart. My sister was also going through a divorce, and then I had another sister who was having difficulty in her marriage. And I was visiting at my sister's, and all three of them were like, it was like a complete biggest complaint: who had the worst husband, who had the worst life, who was the unhappiest. And I'm sitting there going, I'm 3 months from getting married, and I'm just like, why does anybody want to do this if this is what it ends up, right? I'm like looking, going like, okay, 10-year marriage, 20-year marriage, like going on, and I'm like, who wants that? It really actually made me adjust. I actually went into therapy. I actually went into counseling for myself for the next year. I still got married, but I went into counseling because I'm like, you know what? That's the only thing I can control. Is I had to be comfortable with what I had. I had a lot of fears, a lot of like what ifs, but I'm like, but I wasn't going to give up the hope for the future just because of being scared. But I did the work, and I will say we just celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary this year. But I believe 25 years ago, a lot of people didn't do work on themselves.
They readily give up. Yes, and hearing the scary stories, they would have flee, but you decided, to help
Blame
yourself
others,
and take
right?
that chance.
Yeah.
Yes, the blame game. Yeah. Thank
Yes.
you. Awesome. 5 years.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you.
Thank you. Bless you. Many more, 25 more, and a lot more to go. Does Rose, does the outcome of a broken marriage or a common law relationship impact the way individuals treat their future partners?
Yes, yes, yes. It's an experience. How can you
Yes.
not, right? We don't live in silos, right? We live from our experiences, the people who we become on every day. But does it have to negatively affect? No.
Okay.
But it definitely impacts your future relationships. And that's why you have to work on
Yes.
exiting with your head high. You have to do the inner work. You have to understand what part you played in it. So yes, it has an impact, but it doesn't have to be a negative one.
Right.
Right?
Awesome.
You could be so grateful. You could have come out of a terrible relationship, and you'd just be so grateful you finally found the one, right?
Yes.
And then you learn, hey, now I know what I don't want. So now I can focus on what I want. Right?
Yes.
So, and doing that. So yeah.
You've been there, you've done that, have the experience, the expertise beneath your belt. You know now where you stand in really.
And you know the cues, you know what to look for, you can't, you can't erase your past. You just learn from it.
Yes. Lessons, life lessons.
Very.
How, Rose, how can one go through what they're going through and come out better on the other end?
Take the time to feel. You can't heal if you don't feel. Understand where you're at in the process emotionally. Forget about the whole tasks and all the schedule. There is no schedule. There is no specific things you have to do. Like, everybody's going to be different, but definitely don't rush through the process. Take the time. You can grow through it. You can the experience, right? Understanding that. So I'm a huge advocate. Instead of spending money on lawyers, spending money on the divorce process, get a coach, get help, get therapy, join support groups, do the work on you. You will grow through that experience. And you will, as a result of putting all that time and effort in, you will come through better.
Yes. Awesome. Awesome. So take that time to grow, to heal, to know yourself, to love on yourself. Thank you very much, Rose. All right.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Carrie. Like, this has been fabulous. I think the message is so important, what you're doing.
Yes. Yes, indeed it is. And then persons are going through this. So,
that's why I wore pink, because I was just like, I was trying to embody the love.
I was going to wear pink, but I said, no, let me be a little passionate today. Yes. So I choose. So, Rose, suppose somebody wants to be a part of your community and to reach out to you, how can they contact you?
You know, they can follow me on Instagram, on Facebook. They could reach out to me personally on Facebook. My website is kayamdivorce.ca, but I help people all over. The process is all there. So I'm really passionate about working with professional women, just helping them through so that this doesn't define or wreck their life, right? I want them to move on quicker and heal faster.
Awesome. So awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
On a recap, Rose says, take control of your life, you know. There are options available. If it is you decide to do the divorce, you can do it yourself, you know. Come to that round of agreement. Look inward and self-love. If it is you're the one always left behind, look inward. Maybe there's just an issue there, or maybe it's not really you, because it takes two to tango. So, you know, don't just take all the blame, even if they say so. Don't just, no, it takes two. When it comes to divorce, plan and prepare, exchange information necessary, decide who gets what, legal documentation. These are the stages that involve the cost of time, cost of energy, and all these things. So probably if you can take another route, it's best you do than having to go down that detrimental lane. And be mindful of the kids, you know, and the pressure we're applying on them, thinking that they're big enough to understand. But yes, the teenage phase, the puberty phase is a phase where we're trying to find ourselves. So we have to be mindful of all of that and the pressure we're putting on them. All right. So thank you so much again, Rose. Have a great day.
Thank you, Carrie.
All right.
Have a good day. Bye.